All right, I'm joined with Kevin from All American Title, one of the owners, right? Favorite donut place in the Twin Cities? Go.
Easy one. Ufta Donuts in Maple Grove, right off Weaver Lake. No disrespect to Dunkin' or the big chains, but this place takes it to a next level. They're super creative, and they have excellent service. They do a great job.
Love it.
My kids have had every donut, I swear, in the Twin Cities. Literally, they have a bucket list. Last few summers, a bucket list. They want to go to 3 different donut places.
So this is good. This goes deep.
This is. We have some analytics around this.
We go pretty deep here. Do you have a spreadsheet?
I think there was like a written sheet somewhere that we're crossing things off. But Ufta, right in our backyard here, Maple Grove.
That's so awesome.
That's number one.
So what's your go-to donut? I know you're training for something big.
Yeah.
So you're kind of saying fight and shake.
But I have a unique. I like the maple donuts.
So that was what I went to.
Any of the maple flavored.
Thanks for bringing donuts today, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
I went to the maple one right away. Yep.
Yeah.
The glazed. Yeah.
I'll do glazed as well. Double chocolate.
Yeah.
Are pretty good.
That's pretty good too.
Yeah, Dunkin'. Especially on the way to hockey practice, right? For the kids,
yeah.
it's 7 a.m. You roll in.
You have to have hockey donut. And hockey morning, you always have donuts.
Donuts,
it's like
coffee,
a given.
something to bribe the kids
Absolutely.
with. Yeah.
Well, and being the real estate podcast that we're on, golf course house or lake house?
Lake house, hands down lake house.
Lake house, okay.
I always thought golf course house sounds cool.
Yep.
But I like my privacy, right? Like
Sure.
I just, all those people going by all day. My partner actually lives on a golf course. He loves it. And it has its advantages, but something about staring at that lake sounds good to me. That's a life goal.
I'm with you.
Someday.
All right. So would you rather have like a big outbuilding or a sport court?
100% a sport court.
Okay.
That will change maybe someday as the kids get older.
Yeah.
But my kids use our sport court every day.
Okay.
Literally every day.
Classic car or brand new?
Brand new. Don't know anything about classic cars, so need my Apple CarPlay. I think, for sure.
Something brand new.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Speed or big, and like more race car or more like pickup, big truck kind of person?
I'm gonna say probably big, only because I'm not a thrill seeker. The speed stuff, I'm not.
Doesn't do it for you.
I'm more conservative that way.
So maybe that's a good segue into why you chose to own a title company.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I think a lot of people don't really realize how important title is in a real estate transaction. And the people that you work with, super important, right? So maybe walk us through a little bit about what is a title company, what does it do, and why is it important in a real estate transaction?
Awesome. So title's so exciting to talk about. I get
thrills.
Yeah, my Dan Flath, who works for us, talks about how he's the self-proclaimed title nerd.
No
and
joke.
so
He could talk for hours about
us title people, we love it, right?
Yep.
But really, what it comes down to, Matt, is we are protecting your investment. We are protecting the investment of a buyer or a seller, right? So our role in the transaction is kind of to do 2 things. There's the actual title ownership process, and then there is the settlement agent part of what we do, right? So meaning handling all the money and the accounting and making sure that everyone's getting paid and things are being handled appropriately. So the first thing is that protecting your investment, the ownership side of it. Our role is to search the county records, verify all of the things about the property. From who owns it to any mortgages that are outstanding, any liens on title, defects, the actual legal description that we search, and looking at things like boundary lines, any potential problems with the boundary lines, all the way down to, again, your property taxes, assessments. We search all of that and we compile it in what's called a title commitment.
Okay.
And that's sort of what we work off of with the lender to ensure that when someone buys a house, that we're transferring the title appropriately, and that the seller transfers it to the buyer, and the buyer has a good claim to that property. Right?
Okay.
So that's at a very high level the ownership, protecting your investment side, and then we act as the settlement agent. So meaning buyers and sellers come to our office. We explain all the documents that they're going to sign, depending upon if there's a mortgage involved. Obviously, there's some nuances there, and all the money funnels in through us, right? So the buyer is bringing their money to the table, their own money oftentimes, but then the bank's money, that all gets sent to us, and then we are the settlement agent. We settle all the line items from paying off existing mortgages, prorating, paying the property taxes. And then, of course, things like commissions, taxes, transfer taxes, recording taxes, all the fees and everything that gets settled. That's our role in the transaction too.
Sounds to me like details matter.
Big time.
In your work.
Yeah, big time. You have to be a detail-oriented person, and just think of it. Our examiners, for instance, all day long they are looking at property records. That's what they do all day long. And for some of you out there, you might say, gosh, that sounds boring. That sounds terrible. Well, for them, it's their passion. It's what they love to do. They get so much joy and satisfaction and are interested in it, right? So, we're a detail-oriented business for sure.
Okay. Can you explain, on a seller's disclosure, it always asks, do you have an abstract title or a torrents title?
Yeah.
And I was like, how do you explain that?
Yeah, so think of it as the system that has been established for tracking the ownership of a property or anything involved in the actual title or claim to that property. There was a system created here called Torrens that is utilized in Hennepin County on a larger scale. It gets confusing, but it's really just where the entries are made for the ownership of the property and how it breaks down. It gets more complicated and detailed than that.
Yeah.
So when we have a file come in and we see immediately, we will look if it's abstract or torrents. Sometimes they're both. It just flags to us where we need to search as far as all of the entries that have been made in a ledger, so to speak, of who owns the property or any other liens against it.
So what are some of the liens or judgments, or like what are some of the things that you guys look out for when you're doing all these property searches? And then like what's your most common like hiccup, if you will?
Yeah, so the big one is going to be a mortgage, right? So properties are going to have mortgages recorded against it a lot of times. So when you sell your home, right, the part of the role of the title company is to record a satisfaction of the existing mortgage, so you know that mortgage has been paid off. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and so we're going to search the entire tract, but we're looking for anything that's recorded against it. A mortgage is going to be the most common. Then you'll see judgments. I mean, if there's a judgment, if someone has a judgment out there, right, we'll see those that have been recorded against the property, right, so that if you buy a property, you don't want to have a judgment on there from the previous seller, so we're going to call that out on our title commitment. There can then be some more nuanced things, assessment liens, right?
Sure.
So there was a big assessment, maybe there was a street improvement, and the owner of the property didn't pay it. Property tax liens, and then probably the other more common ones, child support. That can be recorded and a lien can be placed on someone's property. And then IRS. That's probably the other big one, right? People not paying their income taxes. The IRS will place a lien on the property. And so all of that needs to get, sort of sorted out when we are transferring ownership from one party to another.
Okay. So you're basically the place that after a deal's accepted, the paperwork comes to you, and you make sure the buyer leaves that closing with true right to the property, and the seller leaves there with being homeless, potentially, but a check.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about title insurance? I hear that like, I don't need it, or 90% of people buy it. Like, what is title insurance and why is it important?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. So there's basically two buckets of title insurance, I think is a good way for us to talk about it. The first one's going to be what's called an owner's policy. And the owner's policy is literally the policy that the buyer purchases to protect them, to protect their interest in the property. And so that owner's policy is going to protect against errors or issues with all the things we just talked about, right?
Yep.
So a mortgage, that wasn't paid off, a IRS tax lien that wasn't paid off, a homeowners association lien that wasn't paid off. An example, that we've seen in the past. Let's say the person selling the home had a home equity line of credit that was maybe a zero balance but wasn't closed, and then that seller continued to use it, but then didn't pay it, and that lender foreclosed, right? So that owner's policy protects the homeowner. It's optional. It's optional. People do not have to purchase it. We see 99% of people 99%. Purchase it because it makes sense. It's a one-time expense. It's relatively cost effective at the grand scheme of a real estate transaction. And so most people opt into that. Then you have your lender's policy. So the lender's policy is a policy that's actually required by 99.9% of lenders and banks in our country. It's how the real estate transfer process works. And so what a lender is doing is they are requiring a title insurance policy to be purchased that ensures that the lender has the first lien position on the home should they need to foreclose on their mortgage. Right? So essentially, there are all those other things that we talked about. There are no other issues in front of that lender. They want to know, I'm going to lend to you 80% of the value of the home, and for some reason you don't pay me back. I have the first claim right to your property.
Okay. Complicated. So how many people are actually involved in a real estate transaction after the deal's done, we send you the paperwork? You talked about examiners, you talked about underwriters, you talked about closers. So how many people really touch every file?
Yeah, I'd say at our company, there's probably between 7 and 10 people that are touching that file, right? So that we call it our production team. Our whole production group, their job is to create that title commitment, right? So that's the report of that individual property. So we're opening a file. We have abstractors. So abstractor's job, they're literally searching the property records, and they're pulling all of the records that they can then give to our examiners to then produce the commitment, right? Examine it. Okay, I can see this loan was paid off. I can see this person bought and sold. I can see this has been taken care of. Our examiners then will do their thing. Then we have someone that types the commitment, someone that proofs it, and then it goes out to what you would see on the real estate side, the closing teams, which is where they get involved. So there's actually a lot of work that's done prior to the client experience that you're having with the closing side of our business.
Yeah, I mean that I had no idea. Right, you give the file to you guys, and we show up at closing, and wow, all these things happen. I had no clue that was that in depth.
Yeah, so we're sort of like an assembly line in that part of our business, right? Sense. And we really track it, and there's metrics, and we're making sure that we're doing a perfect job on that, right? And that's when our responsibility is on the buyer side, right? So we're the one producing the commitment. If you're just selling your home, what's interesting about Minnesota, it's a little unique. There's some other states like this, but we're a split closing state, meaning the buyers and the sellers each have representation of different title companies usually, or their own title company.
Oh, sure.
And so on that seller side, when someone's selling their home, and we're working with you, there's usually another buyer title company that's doing all that stuff I just talked about, right? So there's a different, the way that we share the responsibility with the other title company is a bit unique, but we work together. We're all the same goal in mind. We collaborate to get to the obviously the end closing.
The common goal. So why title versus just having an attorney? Or can people do this themselves if they wanted to? I'm not saying you should. That sounds like a terrible idea, but the barrier of entry to be a title company and to do the things that you do versus going to an attorney or something. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So in our state, most of the property transfers are done by title companies.
Yep.
There's obviously a certain licensing and requirements in order to from a barrier of entry standpoint to be into the game. Really what it amounts to is it's a more efficient, cost-effective way typically to buy your home, is to use a title company, title agency, versus hiring an attorney. That typically the way their model works is more maybe of an hourly fee, or they might have a different structure in how they're charging consumers. Yeah. Not that they can't do that job as well. But as it relates to your question about can they do it themselves, a lot of times the big requirement there is your lender is going to require the lender's title insurance policy. And so you have to be licensed to be able to sell or underwrite and issue that policy, right? So an individual couldn't do that. If they were paying all cash, hypothetically, you could you could close a transaction, without using a title company. Hypothetically, there's some reasons why you might want to choose to use us, right?
Yeah, but I think if I was on the other side of that, I would only be like, I'd be a little skittish about you doing this all yourself, right? Versus having the safety net of an attorney, or in your case, a title company.
Yeah, at the end of the day, our role is to protect your investment. That's how we like to say it. And so to ensure that literally the ownership of that property is transferred from seller to buyer, and there are no claims or issues or clouds in title when that happens.
That's perfect. So when somebody goes to sell the property someday, is there anything they need to bring, or anything that they should say, I forgot I got this, or is it just show up at closing because everything's online, records-wise?
Yeah, so back in the day, so to speak, there were actual abstracts, right? So an abstract would be a book that has all of the entries of the property, right?
They're pretty cool, though.
They are cool.
They are pretty cool.
They're really cool. In our Perham office in central Minnesota, even for I don't remember when we really made that change, but they were still using those abstracts, and I'm sure they're still out there. But the reality is from a technology standpoint, all of the records are online, or there are private businesses that compile the records that we can tap into to search those. So sellers do not have to worry about that. We're able to search the real estate records online.
Okay. So let's jump back. How long have you been with All American Title?
21 years.
Okay, 21 years. This new generation, or even the people that have been in business a little while, as agents or entrepreneurs, why did you decide to get into title, first and foremost?
I think it started with, so growing up, my dad was in corporate America.
Okay.
A very successful business man, taught me a lot of what I know. Very grateful for the experiences I had watching him in his career. But I identified and knew, I think, at an early age, that I didn't want to go the corporate route. And there's some reasons for that. We had to move. We had to relocate. He was traveling a lot, and so from that standpoint, I was a little bit of a homebody. I love Minnesota. I wanted to live here. This place was important to me.
Yeah.
And so I identified early, okay, I don't want to go to the corporate route. What I discovered is I have an entrepreneurial spirit. There's something about that drives me, that to this day, it's one of the favorite things about what I get to do is I wear a lot of different hats in my
the variety in your day.
The variety, and it really presents the opportunity to challenge and test so many different parts of who I am and my skill set as a human being and as a business leader. And so I think I recognized that at an early age, and title was really just the conduit or the pathway to become an entrepreneur. No one goes to college to be in the title business. You don't find title, it finds you, is what a lot of us say.
Yeah.
But once it does, it really is an awesome industry because of all the different facets of it. So I had an older brother that owned his own mortgage company.
Oh, okay.
And that was the conduit. I was a finance major in college, and early 2000s. Brother was in the mortgage business back when I was tease and say everybody was in the mortgage business. It was kind of those go days where there was a lot of
mid
2000s. Yeah. Rates were coming down substantially, and it's a little crazy to think about it. But back then, again, finance major, if you had a pulse and could use a financial calculator, you could be a loan officer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you don't even need the calculator part.
Yeah, someone else could figure that out for you, right? Like talk to a human.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
They were everywhere, and so in some ways, we later discovered we maybe needed some guardrails there and a little more licensing and regulation. But what I loved about it is because interest rates were falling so substantially, we did 100% refinances. That was his niche. That was the business we were in.
Okay.
So it was so awesome and rewarding because you got to sit down with people and say, hey, I can bring you from 8% to 6.5% and save you $200 a month. How does that sound? It's a pretty easy, process, right? Yeah. But that's how I got engaged, and the company that we sent most of our title business to was Kevin, my partner, and All American. Okay. So that's how it all started, and I saw an opportunity to go work with them and learn from them, and brother was in the mortgage side of it, right? So how can I didn't want to be, he had that covered, so I had the opportunity to get in the title side.
I like it. Very cool. You touched on that entrepreneurial spirit a little bit. I don't know. Do you think it's just you born with it or you're not? Because I feel like going to corporate America or you go your own path, it's something people decide at an early age. They don't really I want to be my own thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's something innate in all of us that is attracted to being our own boss, right, so to speak, and having owning our own business, right? It's sort of the spirit and the fabric and foundation of our country in many ways. Really is. I think the reality is there's pros and cons to everything in life, right? And so there's no right or wrong answer. I will say that I felt lucky and grateful that I essentially owned my own business at an early age to make a lot of mistakes, but I didn't have a lot to lose at that point either.
Sure.
I wasn't wise enough to recognize, I was probably,
it makes total sense.
Yeah. It's, you start having a family and a kids and a mortgage and things change. There's more risk and you take a lot of risk as an entrepreneur, right? And so
huge amounts.
I was lucky that I had a partner, first of all, that's like my brother. And we've been partners for 21 plus years. It's very much like a marriage, right?
Yeah.
Some of them work and some of them don't. I'm blessed to have one that's been works. Amazing.
Yeah.
We've been on this journey together for a long time, trying to create the company that it is today.
That's really cool. When you're looking at it from a have it or you don't have it, or, okay, let me ask it a different way. As an entrepreneur, I think that you have to love to wear a lot of hats. And I say the best entrepreneurs have a very big bandwidth, right? Where someone's going to get overwhelmed. That's just like par for the course when it comes to it. Do you find yourself somebody that has a very significant bandwidth? Or how do you manage the day-to-day of all these hats and all the time and energy and effort that it's taken to do such a big thing?
Yeah.
You had said that you wanted to do somewhere around 100,001 sides in the next 10 years?
Correct.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people. So how do you manage that? How do you manage your day, your time, and the stress that kind of comes with it?
Yeah, so I think it begins and starts with, I guess, I don't know if I ever thought about it as deeply as how the way you just put it though, Matt. I think you have to like having a lot on your plate and a lot going on. And be able to manage that effectively, right? And enjoy that and thrive on that.
Variety of it
all. I am a believer in work ethic.
Yep.
Work-life balance is important. We certainly try and create that within the culture of our organization. But to tie it all the way back to the beginning, my dad always talked about working half days. If you want to be successful, you have to work half days.
Okay.
12 hours. And so, I think that's more of a mindset. I'm not suggesting we should all be working 12-hour days, right? And that's the best or most healthy thing. But it starts with work ethic, right? And so you can punch your way out of a lot of tough situations just by sheer will and work alone. Fast forward to 21 years later, How do we organize some of our human capital and energy in order to run the most efficient business? And for us, I'm passionate about EOS, which I know we've talked about in the past. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system.
Yep.
But that really breaks down the foundation of our business. It's how we operate. And so for us, it starts with our core values and our purpose and cause and passion, which is relationship over transaction. But EOS kind of forces you to think about, okay, where do you want our company to be in a year, in 3 years, and then that big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG.
Yep.
And our leadership team said, in the next 10 years, we want to serve 100,001 families. And we picked the one because every transaction, every file does matter. Right?
I love that.
It's very easy.
It's very symbolic.
In people in our business, right, to lose sight of that because we're just grinding away. Yeah. Everyone does matter. And so how are we going to get there, though? You have to have a plan. How are we going to do that? And so I'm a little bit of a systems guy, and our team would probably laugh at that. But we've created a pathway of a 3-year goal and a 1-year goal, and then break it down into quarterly goals of how we can hit that
goal.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah,
I love it. So you have a lot of people that work at All American Title, and one is a salesperson, right? So talk to me about a little bit on what are you selling? And who is your clientele?
Yeah.
I think that's something I never even realized. Like, why does a title company need a sales rep? Right. And then I met her and what she was doing. I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So talk to us a little bit about that first.
Yeah, awesome. Great question. I think you were nice enough to invite me to talk to your team here before the podcast. And so, the thing that we talk about is, if you ask any title company leader, owner, or salesperson for that matter, what makes your company different and special, right? The natural thing for us to say is, we have great service, we have convenient locations, we have cool branding, pricing maybe is something that's discussed. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I say it, right?
Yep.
For us, that's just table stakes. You have to have all those things to be successful, and there's a lot of great title companies out there. But that's just the table stakes. So when our people come into an office or talk to a potential customer, what is going to make us different? Why are we unique and special? And from the beginning for us, number one, we're independent. We've been independently owned from the beginning, right? Yep. So a lot of the brokerages out there have an affiliated title company. They're great too, but our niche has been we're independent. But then we're building, we're trying to create value and add value into the real estate transaction and for the agent. Depending upon the agent and who it is, it's different. And we want to tailor that process to that. So, for instance, our salespeople, some brokerages or agents, they're looking for education. They're looking for classes or events that they can put on. We can do those. They're looking for us to be involved in networking or their organizations. Sure. We can do that. For some people, the client experience is really what's most important. We spend a ton of time curating a high level, 4 seasons level customer experience for people.
4 seasons, I like that. That's good.
So for our salespeople, right? So our customer who they're calling on are realtors, lenders, attorneys, developers, folks that are involved in the real estate transaction. And we just sit down and start asking questions. What's important to you? How can I add value to your business? We're not going to be everything to everybody, but then kind of honing in on that and then seeing how we can complement, add value to your business.
I like it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin.
Thanks,
super
man.
helpful.
Yeah, appreciate you.
I'm more knowledgeable now. So
awesome,
that's
great.
That's good. If nothing else comes of it, I know more now.
Well, we appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you.